What up, team? It was a wild interview today with the founder of ENERGYbits. Her name is Catherine. We had a conversation about the loose definition of what a PhD is. We talked about algae and how it's actually one of the most nutrient-dense and protein-dense foods in the world. Kind of wild. We talked about research and it got kind of heated. I'm not going to lie. We got a little bit heated, but it was all out of love. I had a great conversation. And at the very end, Chloe and I talked to you about whether or not we would get this product or not. And what we decided was...
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Decision Lab. Today, we are talking to Catharine Arnston, the founder of ENERGYbits. Welcome. We're so excited to have you here today.
Thrilled to be here.
Yeah, we're pumped to have you here. So the first section that we dive into actually is a surprise section that we don't tell our guests about.
Oh, okay.
So let's listen in here.
Well, where to begin? So 3 characteristics of Katherine Arnsten would be her creativity, her passion, and her strong vision. Very, very strong vision, I'll have you know. One thing that I would say she has done that has had a huge impact on my life has opened my eyes more to my gut health and educating myself on my body and how certain things work and really like what algae provides for the human body. And so she's definitely had a huge impact on my actual personal health.
So tell us a little bit about who that was and what they mean to you.
Sure. That's Michael Sette. He's our chief marketing officer. In fact, I met Michael probably 4 years ago and thought he was a rock star then, but he had his own company. And then things happened and I was able to recruit him to work with us on a contract basis last year to help us move to a new website. And he did such an incredible job. I just said, do you think you could stay? Sort of like, a kid finding a puppy in the street and, Mommy, can we keep him? So we were quite fortunate. He was excited about what we were doing and the impact of algae on the world. And so he stayed and has been with us full time for the last year and he is a rock star. He's helping me get the message of algae and the nutrition that it offers and the healing properties it has out to the world using digital media, which is not my strength. I'm a baby boomer. And my skill set is really the science and the strategy and the vision and the education. So without someone like Michael, my world would be much smaller and algae would not have the opportunity to make the impact that it needs to have made.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I've been there with employees. People are like, oh, wow, this is awesome. Like, hey, you want to just stay around? One of our main interns became actually who is now our brand director. So I feel you.
Yeah, we're very much a walk before you run company, and it's very much a DNA driven kind of hiring process because we're not just your average company. People really have to believe in our mission and I've kept outside investors out because it's the difference between falling in love and speed dating. Building a brand that's going to make a difference in the world is falling in love, and it's a very long process, and you have to earn every win one person at a time versus speed dating, which is very transactional. Just selling stuff. I've never wanted to sell stuff. I want to make a difference in the world, but I have to do it my way, which is the ground up, showing real science, showing commitment to our community. I mean, I didn't plan to build a company. I just wanted to help my sister recover from breast cancer. That's all I wanted to do. And then I realized I could help more people. And then that ultimately led me to building a company, which was not my original goal. But algae has become the platform for making a difference in the world. We are in a health and nutritional and spiritual and mental health crisis. And ironically, I know it sounds crazy, but algae fills and satisfies all those needs and will change the world in so many ways. But I can't help anybody if I can't get it into them. So it's a long journey to educate people and communicate using the new platforms that exist that weren't around when I was your age. So it takes a team. I mean, I started the journey and the vision, but to keep this going and growing, you need a lot of people with different talents, and they have to really understand the vision and they have the DNA because I've had people who have been staying with me now for 10 years. So we have virtually zero turnover. So I guess we're doing something right.
Right. I love that. Well, we'll get deeper into that here. Let's talk a little bit about your origin story first and talk about you specifically. So tell us a little bit about your background. How'd you get here? Like start Where are you from? We just mentioned you're from Canada, like Chloe,
Yeah.
so that's awesome. But where are you from?
I am
And tell us about that.
Canadian, still born in Toronto. I lived most of my life around Toronto, although usually in smaller communities, much smaller communities. So I'm very much a small town girl, although I've always had big dreams of making a difference in the world. And so I did an MBA and in international business, actually. And I came to the United States right after my MBA, and I was living in Manhattan for a couple of years, and then they got promoted to Boston, and I was living in Boston for 35 years, although I've recently moved to Miami where it's warmer. And I had a corporate career. I was happy enough with that. And then out of the blue, 17 years ago, my younger sister, I have two sisters, and they're all the only family I have left. My parents have both passed, and I'm very close to my sisters. One's older, one's younger. So my baby sister, 17 years ago, was diagnosed with breast cancer. First of all, I want to let everyone know that she did completely heal, and we celebrate her being cancer-free every year. But as she was preparing for her chemotherapy, her oncologist, which happened to be a woman, which we were lucky because women tend to be a bit more open to nutritional concepts, her oncologist told her to change her diet to an alkaline diet. Now, she didn't tell her what an alkaline diet was or why it was specifically good for her, so the first call my sister made was to me because I love her, number one, and number two, I'm just a really good researcher. And in fact, recently, just about 6 months ago, I got my PhD in natural health because I'm just a lifelong learner and I love solving problems. So when she said she needed this alkaline diet and I'd never heard of it, that didn't stop me. I just went to the internet, did my research, and found out, and you can too, it's mostly a plant-based diet because of the chlorophyll and the phytonutrients that have been proven for decades to build your immune system. And when you go through chemo, you need to have a strong immune system. So that was number one. The second thing I found out was that there was a German scientist by the name of Otto Warburg who won a Nobel Prize back in 1931 for discovering that cancer, and frankly any disease, cannot exist in cells if they are slightly alkaline. So the scale of alkalinity goes from 0 to 14. So as long as your cells are at least 7.1, new cancer cells can't take hold. So I have to believe that this was the other reason why her oncologist wanted to have an alkaline diet. So I found all kinds of foods for her to eat, ones not to eat. She did go through chemo, she did change her diet, and she did completely heal, which is the best story of all. But in the process of helping her, I was like Alice in Wonderland, falling down the rabbit hole. I'd never known anything about nutrition, just your basics, calories, whatever. And I was discovering all this new information. I was like, my gosh, this is phenomenal. But why isn't anybody talking about it? This was, remember, 17 years ago. People weren't talking about plant-based nutrition. You can't walk into a room now without talking about plant-based nutrition. Everybody talks about plant-based nutrition, but they weren't then. So I thought, I have no background in any of this, but I am a very passionate person. I'm very proactive. I'm going to do something about this because I can't stand this. So I gave up my 25-year corporate career. I went back to school. I went to a place called the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and I got a health coaching certificate. And it was enough nutrition that it gave me a grounding and a foundation, because then I put together my curriculum teaching plant-based nutrition. I gave free workshops at corporations and hospitals, basically anybody would let me in, trying to get people to eat more vegetables because I'd seen the science. And this is what truly led me to Algae, because I got so much pushback from people saying, the vegetables give me gas, or they're too hard to carry home from the grocery store, or they take too much room in my fridge, or they take too long to cook, or they go bad too quickly, or my kids won't eat them, my husbands won't eat them. So I thought, okay, if I can't get people to eat more vegetables, and mothers have been trying to do this since, the day the world began, I need to find something that gives them the nutrition of vegetables without any of the mess, without any of the work, without any of the digestive distress, without any of the expiration issues. I had no idea what I would find. And this is also a little message we'll get to later on. But, when the universe directs you in a certain way and you're open to listening to it, don't worry that you don't have the full story yet. Just put one foot in front of the other and have trust that you will be led to where the next decision will be made. So that's what I did. And lo and behold, I looked at everything for my sister I'd found for my sister. Nothing was looking better. And then boom, I got to algae. And that's when the miracle happened. Because first of all, algae is the most alkaline food in the world. And that was the most important thing, according to my sister's oncologist. Number two, it turns out that algae has been declared the answer to world hunger by the United Nations 50 years ago. They had a global conference. You can go online and read the proceedings. Why? Because algae has the highest concentration of protein in the world. It has 3 times the amount of protein as steak, chicken, fish. There's nothing in the world with more protein than spirulina algae, and it's a sustainable source of protein. Also, NASA's been feeding algae to the astronauts for 50 years. They have said that 1 gram of algae has the same nutrition as 1,000 grams of fruits and vegetables. And, we'll get into this later on. We sell our algae in large bags of 1,000 tablets. And 1 bag of 1,000 tablets, I used that calculation, has the same nutrition as 551 pounds of vegetables. To give you a visual, that's about 30 grocery carts of vegetables right here. That's efficient nutrition. Endorsed by United Nations, endorsed by NASA. It's been used safely in Asia daily for 60 years. It's an agricultural crop. It is not a supplement. We're going to talk about that later on. Yes, algae is in the oceans and the rivers, but whether you go to Target or Whole Foods or BJ's or us, algae is grown in farms. Freshwater farms. This is a spirulina farm and this is a chlorella farm. So it is not a supplement. It is a food crop. It's a whole food. It's a foundational food. And it's a multi-billion-dollar agricultural crop in Asia. 99.9% of all algae that you see sold anywhere in the world comes from Asia. And 99% of it is consumed in Asia. That's why, and we'll get into this later, why you don't know about it, because it's not grown here and nobody's told you about it. So I do plan to grow it here, by the way, in Florida. It has the same, we grow ours in Taiwan, has the same climate as Taiwan. So internationally endorsed, used safely, agricultural crop. It's also been studied and documented in 100,000 studies for all these different health benefits, whether it's reducing inflammation, preventing Alzheimer's, preventing heart disease, preventing any kind of illness, filling nutritional gaps, pulling out toxins. The list is literally endless and science-based.
We'll get to those here in a second. Let's focus on you still for a couple minutes here.
Okay.
I love the energy and the hype, but I would love to understand a little bit more about, you mentioned you got a PhD in natural health. Could you summarize your research question and your dissertation and explain maybe why your findings were significant to your field?
Yeah, so what happened was, because I'm running this company, and what was happening was I'm completely self-taught. I called myself a citizen scientist because for 14 years, I just tethered myself to the internet and PubMed and researched all these different terms that I had never known about because I had been studying business. I'd never had a single drop of biochemistry, molecular chemistry, biology, nothing. So I was completely self-taught, and it freaked me out for a while thinking, as I learned all this stuff, and I was proposing different reasons why people were getting sick, and it turned out all the other PhDs were saying the same thing. And like, this is wild that I've taught myself the same stuff that these PhDs also know. And so I speak on podcasts and conferences, but a lot of the science conferences, like there's one called A4M, they wouldn't let me speak because I wasn't an MD or a PhD. So I thought to myself, okay, I'll go get one because I need to get this information out, and I needed people to trust me because when you walk into a room and you're self-taught, there's still some question about whether you're legitimate or not. But if you walk into a room with your PhD, they know that you know your stuff. So I am very busy running the company, and I thought, well, I don't have time to take 5 years out to get a PhD and write this dissertation. So I started contacting schools to explain all the work I'd done with mitochondria health and the research in algae. And so I found this one school called the Kingdom College of Natural Health, who I sent them all my papers that I'd written, and they said, well, this is sufficient. You don't need to do a dissertation because you've clearly done a lot of research on your own and everything is science-based, and I am proposing lots of nuances that nobody else is proposing. Like, we do know certain attributes about mitochondria health and what helps them, but nobody knows that these nutrients that help the mitochondria are found in algae. So I've connected the dots in a way nobody else did. So I didn't have to write a dissertation, but I did have to write the exams. So I got my stack of books. There must have been like 6 feet of books. And I had to learn all the different body processes. It was like studying for your medical boards. And by the way, my niece, who lives in Calgary, is a ER doctor, and she did have to study the boards, and she has to put it into play every single day when she's saving people's lives. I only wanted the PhD so that I could continue doing research and speak and be able to give my knowledge to people who wanted to hear it. So I had to write the exams. So I wrote them all last summer. And I got the good news that I passed. It was like the first week of September. In fact, my graduation ceremony, I wasn't able to go to my graduation ceremony, but I do have my diploma, and they said I can come to the ceremony next year if I want. So it was all, so I had to learn all the different body parts. Some of these exams were very, very complex because you had to talk about interactions, for example, between different nutrients and drugs, or different nutrients and other nutrients and herbs. It was very, very difficult. It was very difficult. But I've been taking algae ever since I started down this journey 16 or 17 years ago. And so I want to tell people that even though I'm going to be 70 next year, 70 next year, my brain is apparently still working, and I still have the energy to travel and give lectures and run a company. Anyway, so I'm kind of a sample size of one, but nonetheless, I am proof that, and I do nothing else differently. I don't take any medications. I don't take any other supplements. I have, as I mentioned, I have two sisters who are very healthy and very fit, and they do sometimes take the algae still, not as much as I do. But this stuff seems to be working for me. So I'm very excited to help other people enjoy the same kind of health benefits I have personally experienced, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and I attribute most of it to algae.
It's interesting that you don't have the dissertation piece of a PhD is generally the longest, most thorough portion of a PhD. Usually it's like 2 or 3 years of learning and things like that. And
Yes,
research is a huge
15
piece of PhD research. So you keep mentioning research. Is there research that you've like done or performed specifically, or like I'm just curious, or I love connecting all the dots.
Yeah.
Was there any research you performed or things like that they examined for that?
No, so I give these lectures that are, CEU credit lectures on mitochondria health, because that's ultimately your longevity and your health are determined by your mitochondria. And so, remember, I didn't know what a nucleus was. Certainly didn't know what a mitochondria was. And the electron transport chain is not an easy concept, and the Krebs cycle. These are all very, very complex things to get your head around. And pharmaceutical companies are spending billions of dollars trying to figure out how to protect the mitochondria and creating all these drugs. But the irony is, I was able to connect the dots in a way that nobody else has. Like, for example, the mitochondria are the only cell in your body that have two membranes. All your other cells have a lipid membrane. The mitochondria have that, but they also have an inner membrane. And most people have no idea about that, number one, and where that inner membrane came from, number two, which I'll tell you about if you want to know, and what that does to why it's causing such a problem. Because in the mitochondria, which is where all your cellular energy, the ATP, is produced, a byproduct of ATP are free radicals. And so people go, well, I take antioxidants to get rid of free radicals. Well, because of that inner membrane in the mitochondria, which don't have what's called porins, which are channels that allow antioxidants in or out, most antioxidants can't get in there. So you can have a room full of blueberries or vitamin C or vitamin E, and none of it will stop the free radical damage of the mitochondria. But there are a few antioxidants that can get in there. One is called superoxide dismutase, and there's 25,000 studies talking about how superoxide dismutase prevents Alzheimer's, prevents heart disease, reduces inflammation, protects the mitochondria. 25,000, that's a big number. But nobody seems to know that superoxide dismutase, which is not available in any food, and if you take it, I don't even think there's any supplements. There used to be, but they found out they don't get absorbed. Nobody knows that the highest concentration of SOD is in algae, spirulina algae. But superoxide dismutase is also an enzyme. And so all these other cheaper algae companies that cut corners to get to market quickly are using high heat to dry their algae so they can sell more and sell it faster. So their superoxide dismutase is deactivated. I didn't know why ours was working so well, because our stuff always works so well. So these are some of the things that I was able this took me 15 years this is just one little teeny tiny example of where I was connecting the dots, trying to understand, why mitochondria get damaged, why aren't they, and why is it at age 40 or 50 that they see the most damage, and I can explain to you why, and why is it that algae seems to be preventing that. We've done a few clinical trials of our own when I oversaw the clinical trials and all that sort of stuff. So that's because I've spent so much time researching all of this, and it all surrounded the mitochondria, trying to figure out what was happening to them, why were they getting damaged, what prevents the damage, what is the process by which ATP is produced, what are some of the there's helper molecules that are also found in algae that stimulate the process of the ATP production. I could go through the whole presentation if you want, but it's very complex and it's very science oriented. So it was in fact its own thesis in its own right, if you want to call it that, because it was an approach towards mitochondrial health using the nutrients found in algae, and nobody else has talked about that ever in the world.
The part that I'm most interested in is a lot of what you're describing. When you're saying research, where I guess I'm getting confused is it sounds like the literature review portion of a dissertation where you're collecting information, you're collecting stuff. You're
Yes.
starting to think, oh, there's a gap here. No one's talking about this. No one's doing that, which
Yes.
is great. Research, I guess when I hear it, is I had a hypothesis. I tested it with a large sample size. It was double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized. Like I
Yes,
had
and
a
you had $1
research
billion to do
methodology
it.
and those types of things. Well, I mean, in a traditional PhD, they'll pay for it or whatever for you to do that. So that's why I was curious. I'm just so surprised they would pull that part out of that specific process of research out of a PhD program.
Yeah.
Because it's like the most important piece.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate that we're part of this society that rewards, only trusts what I call credentialism. So it's like you can't be smart unless you have a PhD. Well, I had the same smart before my PhD and after my PhD. And 200 years ago, there weren't universities where people got degrees to get recognition. They just had an idea and they pursued the idea and tested the idea and got solutions for a problem, which is exactly what I did, which is exactly what I was trying to do. And this particular school, it's called the Kingdom College of Natural Health, they recognized that our society has failed us because what they're doing is allowing people to go to school and just study stuff and get a degree and maybe not solve any problems, but they get a degree, big whoopee. And everyone goes after that. This school says there's people out in the world making change, committing themselves to science, committing themselves to finding a solution that is natural. And so the reason I went with them is because they said, we are exactly what you need. We will allow people like you who have shown commitment, 15 years of research, pursuing research, learning, creating hypotheses, connecting the dots like no one else has. That's commitment. I mean, on the summers, people on the beach, I'm on my computer at 2:00 in the afternoon reading PubMed, trying to understand why one particular thing that I found in one particular passage in a 30-page paper didn't make sense to me. And then I would find something else that would make sense for me. So they recognize there's people like me that need to have the credentialism because of our society. And you have to interview with them and you have to still write these exams, which are very, very difficult, and pass. In fact, 2 of the exams I didn't pass, but you get a chance to do it twice. So I did do them a second time, and then I had to write another paper to support the one. It was the vitamins and interaction with drugs that I didn't do well on. So I feel that I have accomplished the goal which I was trying to achieve by getting a PhD, which was I have done my own literature review. I have come up with theses and solutions that nobody else seems to have been noticing. It's like you can't see the forest for the trees. Everyone's in silos in the science world. And so I stepped back and looked at the bigger problem and realized, gosh, SOD, there's people that are focusing on SOD, but they don't know there's SOD in algae. There's people focusing on the electron transport change. They don't realize that CoQ10 molecule and the cytochrome C molecule are improved by nutrients found in algae. There's other people looking at apoptosis and autophagy, and they don't realize that you don't have to, glutathione isn't the only thing that will improve autophagy. You can get autophagy through the nutrients found in algae. So I took a very high level approach to what a lot of siloed scientists were doing, and I put it under the umbrella called algae nutrition that has all these incremental individual nutrients that collectively work together to solve a problem that they're trying to create drugs to solve. And you don't need the drugs if you have good, healthy algae. And by the way, algae was the first life on Earth almost 4 billion years ago, and it's still here. And there's something very spiritual about the first life. I don't know why spirulina, which is a cyanobacteria, showed up. Cyanobacteria was the first life on Earth. It's all proven in something called endosymbiotic theory. And all the evolutionary science shows that your mitochondria, by the way, drum roll, came from algae. So there's a huge gap in people understanding what algae is, why it's so important from a spiritual, nutritional, healing perspective. And so that's what I have been doing. That's my lens. My lens is I take all these individual nutrients found in algae, because nobody seems to know that they're there, and apply them to all these different benefits that have been scientifically proven to be achieved for mitochondria health, longevity, brain health, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, and I love it. And no shade at the work that you've done. I guess more of my perspective is there is a scientific review process and a peer review process that would allow some of your peers to see some of the work and connections you're making. If some of it, to me, it's almost like, oh, damn, it's almost like a disservice. You didn't get to do that because now it's not being out there and more people aren't getting to know about it.
Yes,
the scientific space is more kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that, because I was finally accepted as a speaker at A4M, which is a very prestigious science-based functional medicine conference, and I've been trying to get accepted there for over 2 years, and they finally accepted me, and then my schedule wouldn't allow me to do it, but I'm hoping to speak with them in December. But the bottom line is my message will get out to my peers. I love talking shop with PhDs, and in fact, that's what made me realize I need this, because when I go to these conferences, my greatest joy and excitement is when I talk to other scientists who have been pursuing another little angle, and then I can contribute my knowledge to theirs, and then they contribute theirs to mine. Like I said, I'm a lifelong learner. When I was a kid, other kids were trying to sneak into the movie theater to watch a Disney movie. I was sneaking into conferences. I just am a learner. I still read books. I'm old school. I would be back at school and doing another PhD if I wasn't running a company. I want to write a book. I want to do a TED Talk. I'm probably not, but running the company is massively time consuming. And I do have an MBA, but that doesn't prepare you for running as a company that's growing as fast as we are. And so I just didn't have time to write a thesis and go through the peer review process, because my goal was to get this knowledge to the world. I didn't need a pat on the back by my fellow peers, although it would have been nice. I see them at conferences.
To be said for that as like validation, and checking in and doing testing some of these hypotheses that you have as well. So I mean and it's interesting that the credentialism I come up against as well. I totally get it, but PhD does communicate a certain thing to people, especially for example, I've spent 20,000 hours studying psychoneuroimmunology, but I don't call myself I don't say I have a PhD I just say I have a degree.
Did you get a PhD?
In
Well, of course you can't call yourself a PhD. I couldn't call myself a PhD either until I went through the scholastic process where they tested me rigorously on subject matter. I didn't have to write the thesis because I showed them all the work I had previously done, which was the equivalent of a thesis. So, the trouble is, as I said, we live in a world of credentialism. I was being cut out or shut out because I didn't have a particular designation. I was prepared to go down that route to get it. And I was prepared to fail my exams. And if I had failed my exams, I would have done it again, because this message, I was not going to let the universe down. There was made no sense to me at all that I am the voice of algae. It makes zero sense. My entire career was in business, although I do love the arts and design. Actually, I was a publisher of an interior design magazine, but zero science. But when I was able to see my sister get better, and when I started reading the science and nobody was talking about it, against all odds, I mean, you want to know some of the junk I've gone through. So I just decided I was going to do this because the universe tapped on my shoulder and said, "You're the one." And it's I kept saying, "No, find somebody who knows science. I don't know any science. Find somebody else." But I just kept reading and I thought, okay, I'll keep trying. But I had no money, no background, no support, no advisory board, no investors, just me. And I was determined to make a change, an impact on the world. In the process, you ready for the dirty stuff? I went through bankruptcy. An MBA, I went to friggin' bankruptcy. How embarrassing is that? For 10 years, it was on my record, so I couldn't get any credit cards for 10 years. I was in foreclosure for 3 years. Women, by the way, have the biggest fears that they'll end up in a a shelter. And I was sure that one day, because I had no money, but I was not going to give up on this pursuit of finding out why algae was so amazing and why nobody outside of Asia knew about it. I had my car repossessed. I was so embarrassed by absolutely everything that happened to me, but I absolutely refused to give up. I didn't pay myself for 10 years. I didn't have, the only things I could afford to eat were eggs and algae. Of course, right now you probably couldn't afford eggs, but eggs and algae. I didn't have to pay for my algae. And what are my two favorite foods now? Eggs and algae, right? I'm not going to afford anything. And I'll tell you an interesting little scenario. There's a little chain of food companies called Panera Bread. I don't know if they have them in Canada, but they have them down here in the States. And they had a nonprofit version of this cafe called Panera Cares.
I've seen this.
I don't know if they still have it, but the idea was if you couldn't afford to eat at the restaurant, you could just pay whatever you could, 5 cents, 10 cents, a quarter. So I had no money, like zero money. I had gotten some unemployment while I was doing all this, but I had quite a wardrobe from when I had a corporate career. And so I had these fancy clothes, no money, but I would go to this Panera. I went there 3 times and got a salad or a sandwich or something and paid $1 or a cent. And the third time I was there, the store manager came up to me and he said, "You clearly can afford to pay the regular retail price. We'd like to ask you next time you come that you pay the regular price." I was mortally embarrassed. I never went back because I thought, oh my God, and I've never really told any of these stories to people, but there's no reason why I have done this, but there's a little voice that was in my heart when I saw my sister get better and I started reading the science about how, 1 in 2 women are getting cancer and heart disease, everything's escalating and our food supply is just so diminished in terms of nutritional value. And I saw what the nutritional value was in algae, and all the science of all the things that it had in there that wasn't available anywhere else, and that it could universally turn everything around. And so I thought, it makes no sense. My family thought I was off the deep end. I didn't leave. I didn't go out for dinner for 2 years because I didn't have any money. All my friends left me because they thought I was having a breakdown. I thought I was having a breakdown. Didn't make any sense to me at all, but I just kept going and then slowly started to make some sense. I was by myself for the first 5 years. Not a single person helped me. I would label my bags of algae tablets by myself, put them in my knapsack, take them around to my friends and sell them from my knapsack. I knew all the staff at the local post office because I would mail everything personally. When the posties had a retirement time, I was invited to the retirement party because I was, my world was the post office, the grocery store, and my little office. I worked out of my condo for the first 8 years. I had all the inventory was in my bathtub. There wasn't a single square inch in my condo that didn't have office stuff. So eventually I tried to get an office. It was too expensive, so I ended up renting an apartment in my building that was a studio, and then we moved to a 1-bedroom apartment where we stayed for 5 years, and now we're in a real office, my first real office, 15 years, and that was just like 6 months ago, and that electric sign was just turned on yesterday. I'm now just starting the race of getting algae out to the world. It's taken me 16 years to get the science, to get the PhD, to get the packaging. I taught myself package design because I come from a design background. I was a publisher of interior design mag. I know how important design is. Steve Jobs would have told you the same thing. What he did, not to compare myself to Steve Jobs, what he did was he took very dull, complex computing knowledge and put a spin on it, designed it in a way and made it available to the consumer so they would want it, then they would use it, and it would elevate their life and their lifestyle in a way that had never been done before. That was his brilliance. He took something important and complex in science and put a spin on it. I'm doing the same thing for algae nutrition. It's complicated, it's science, it's boring, but I designed all of our packaging. I taught myself package design. This is not an easy thing to do. And how did I do package design? I knew I had to get boxes, so I went to Whole Foods, got all the empty boxes. I was raiding their garbage bins, got all the Kind bars, Lululemon, Luna bars, lined them up on my dining room table, measured the width, the length, what words were on the front. Oh, did they have pictures of the founder, or they did, or they didn't? And I found out what the traditional sizes were. Then I made my boxes on PowerPoint. I printed them up on paper, and then I cut them out, and I made little mini boxes. I still have all my mini boxes, so if anyone ever doubts whether I was the designer of our stuff, I can prove to you that I did it, because I didn't know Adobe, but I did teach myself how to do package design. And so we did the box designs. Eventually I did canisters. Have you ever tried doing anything round? It's very difficult because you have to be sure everything matches perfectly. That leaf took me like a year to get it to match perfectly. I found all the vendors. I learned supply chain. I did have an MBA, but I had to teach myself finance. I had to teach myself how to do recruiting. I had to teach myself HR. I had to teach myself speaking, feeling confident. I mean, if you go out on a stage and you've just learned something and you're trying to look confident, man, it's scary because you're speaking to people that really know their stuff and you've just learned your stuff and you think, am I going to be laughed off the stage? I was laughed off the stage once because I used to also speak at triathlon clubs because we were in sports nutrition for a while. And I was telling all the triathletes that the algae would give them, spirulina would give them endless energy, but there's only 1 calorie per tablet. So they would literally heckle me and say, well, how could something with 1 calorie give me energy? Because this is when they were still believing that calories were calories. And it's because, and I said, well, you know what? I actually don't know. I'll have to get back to you. So that was another stage of my research. Why does this give you energy? What is going on? And where does the energy come from? And it turned out it was from the cellular energy, the ATP production, the electron transport chain. And I found out what was in the spirulina that improves the energy production and all that sort of stuff. So, there is every single thing that has been thrown at me, but it's like, okay, I'll figure that out. I'm trying to think. Like Brene Brown says, we can do hard things, and I have been doing hard things, and I'm still doing hard things, and my greatest joy is like I am the voice of algae because algae needed somebody to explain it because it's been around for 4 billion years, and people in Asia sure know how well it works. But I explained to people, well, you didn't know about quinoa or chia or bone broth or a collagen powder and those things have been used in other countries for centuries until somebody here in America explained them to you and then branded them away and distributed them. But the problem for me is I did not want venture capital involved because I know what they do to a founder. I know that what they do for a company. They'll cut corners. And I was so determined to keep the quality and to build also a company with a heart. I really treat my team well. I care about them. They know it. And it's not the way most companies are run, but I couldn't do it any other way. This company and this product and algae, we're inseparable. Because it's so honorable and it's so full of integrity. And in fact, I just recently I'm trying to write a book, but I wrote a little mini booklet called The Algae Love Story. And because I compared algae to love, because algae does everything love does. Love is for everyone, so is algae. Love is sustainable, so is algae. Love is nourishing, so is algae. Love is proven, so is algae. Love gives you life, so does algae. Love is healing, so is algae. Love is energizing, so is algae. Love is effortless, so is algae. Love is pure, so is algae. Love is grown, so is algae. Love is wholesome, so is algae. Love is timeless, so is algae. Love is necessary, so is algae. And love is mysterious, so is algae. Love is ancient, so is algae. So I have learned that, I had to know all the science. The way I've learned about myself, I have to know everything and then I have to pull it back. Because most people don't want everything. I'm on the crazy woman, have to know absolutely everything. Because if I'm putting my name on it and I'm going out there, I have to know my stuff. So I've gone way deep into the science. I know for sure this stuff is absolutely essential for our life at this time in our life, whether it's for environmental, for brain health, for spiritual health, for nutritional health, to stop all these chronic diseases. I know it sounds crazy, but algae is everything for that.
A little bit here.
But people don't want all that science. They just want this.
Let's dive into ENERGYbits here. Let's dive into your claim to fame so we can tell more people about this. So what is your ENERGYbits? Why should we care about it? 60 seconds. And I'm going to stop.
Why should we care about ENERGYbits or why should we care about algae in general?
ENERGYbits. Tell us about ENERGYbits and why we should care about it in 60 seconds.
Because most of the algae tablets that are available do not follow best practices. And so you are missing at least 50 or maybe 75% of the benefits that you should be getting from algae because it's not grown carefully or dried correctly to preserve the nutrition. The way I describe it is it's like getting a great deal on a great car, except you lift the hood and there's no engine. Looks great, doesn't work. So I just couldn't sell something to people if I wasn't 100% confident they were getting every single value proposition from it. And that's what makes us different.
That kind of leads to the next question is there are tons of superfood companies out there. Why build one yourself? After all of the stuff you just described and how hard it was, is it because the other stuff is just not good enough, or what's your thought?
Because when you're, it's like they were already businesses in operation. And for example, when I first started thinking about this, there's a company called Sun Chlorella. They were the original chlorella company in Japan, and I met with them. And in Asia, the families generally own these big businesses. And when they the way that the Japanese do things is they study, and then they launch a company. And then once it's launched, they don't change anything ever because they did all the research up front. America is quite different. You study a teeny bit more and you launch, and then you fix it and you launch. You relaunch. So I talked to them and I said, hey, you have a great product, but your branding is so unfriendly. It was green and red, and they hadn't changed it in 40 years. They were a 40-year company. I said, have you ever thought of changing it so the American population might understand it? Because it looked so medicinal. And they said, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we're always going to do it. I thought, okay, then. Well, then I'm going to do it my way.
Nice. Oh, yeah.
I don't want to have to, this is back to the PhD credentialism. I didn't want to go to a company that already had their toe in the water, or they'd already established their market share, their market credentials, their market style, branding, pricing, whatever, and beg them to change. I just thought, I'm going to do it my way. It's sort of like the song, do it my way. So I knew it was going to take longer. I knew it was going to be harder. But there was no other option for me.
That's beautiful. Could you explain the difference between, because on your website, the two you kind of talk about, Spirulina and chlorella. Yeah. What's the difference between those two things? Explain what they are a little bit, and then what's the difference between the two of them?
Sure. Well, both of them, by the way, are microalgae, which is quite different from macroalgae. I explain to people that algae is a food category, and there's macroalgae and microalgae are the two categories. So macroalgae is that stringy stuff that washes up on shore, also known as seaweed or dulse or kelp. It's very high in iodine because it's only in the sea, which is why it's called seaweed. High in fiber, virtually zero nutrition. Microalgae, which is what we're talking about, and spirulina and chlorella are two of those, are completely different. Either zero fiber or virtually no fiber. The highest concentration of nutrition in the world. Like you can get 1 million of these on the head of a pin. That's how tiny it is. And it's everywhere, not just in the sea. So in macroalgae, there's only a handful of strains, red seaweed, brown seaweed, green seaweed. Microalgae, there's tens of thousands of strains. One strain is blue-green algae. Another strain is green algae. The way why it's called blue-green is because it has two pigments in it. Spirulina is a blue-green algae because it has the green pigment called chlorophyll, but it also has its own another pigment called phycocyanin, which is spelled phycocyanin. Chlorella is just a green algae because it only has one pigment, chlorophyll. Now, those are, so there's lots of other blue-green algae, and the ones that close your favorite beach, they're not spirulina. It's just another strain of blue-green algae, and same with chlorella. Now, spirulina and chlorella happen to be the best known versions of microalgae because they're the ones that just got started growing back in the 50s in Asia and just kept going, and so they're the most popular. There are other ones, but these are the two that people know about. Spirulina, its claim to fame is that it gives you energy, physical and mental energy, and it satisfies your hunger. And it does that a couple ways. It satisfies your hunger because it has the highest protein in the world, 64% protein. And most importantly, the protein is already in individual amino acids. Animal protein is all bound up, and it can take up to 2 or 3 days for your body to break it down into aminos. And if you don't have the factors and cofactors, you don't absorb it all. With algae, the aminos are all individual. It has 18 of the 20, including the 9 your body can't make. So it's a complete protein. So it's nourishing because of the protein. It also is loaded with essential fatty acids, including omega-3 and B vitamins. So what happens is your body converts the B vitamins convert the aminos into glucose, and so you get a small boost of energy in the moment. But more importantly, what it does, it has these nutrients that feed the mitochondria, speed up the production of this stuff called ATP, so that you get more cellular energy. But bottom line is spirulina is an energizing algae, both at the mitochondrial level and at the mental and physical level. Really great for plugging nutritional gaps. It's 40 vitamins and minerals, and it's absorbed instantly because it has no cellulose wall. It is a bacteria. Spirulina is a cyanobacteria. It is not a plant. So most people take spirulina in the morning or the afternoon or before a workout because that's when you're tired or hungry. That's when you want focus at work, or if you're driving a car, or you're a doctor and doing anything. This will give you energy at the cellular level in the mitochondria, and it's very steady energy. It's not a stimulant. Stimulants are like coffee, chemicals of sugar, and you get a burst. It's like putting paper on a fire. Algae is like spirulina is like putting a log on the fire. Very steady energy. So that's spirulina. Chlorella, the green algae, is completely. One other thing I want to, and we'll talk about this when we get to mitochondria. The reason why it gives you focus is multiple reasons, but the main one, again, is that it improves your mitochondria health. And your brain has the most mitochondria per cell. There's 2 million mitochondria per cell in your brain. And we all know that fatty fish are considered brain food, but spirulina is also brain food. By the way, I tell people, where do you think the fish get the omega-3 from? They get it from algae in the ocean. So that's one thing. But it has because it has all these healing properties for the mitochondria, it turns your lights back on in your head. So spirulina, very much brain food. Chlorella is really gut food. And the reason for that is because it won't give you energy. It doesn't have the blue phycocyanin that speeds up the ATP production. And it does have fiber. So the fiber feeds your gut biome so it can form what's called short-chain fatty acids. So that's really important. The fiber, chlorella's fiber, is attached to toxins, heavy metals, glyphosate, pesticide, alcohol, lactic acid, and chelates them, pulls them out of your body. So the fiber is very important for your gut and is also for detoxing. So that's why we call our chlorella recovery bits, because it helps you recover from just about anything. Chlorella also has the highest chlorophyll in the world. Chlorophyll, in fact, that's why it's called chlorella, because of the chlorophyll. It has 25 times more chlorophyll than liquid chlorophyll, 500 times more than arugula. There is nothing in the world with more chlorophyll than chlorella algae. And chlorophyll, kills bacteria everywhere, the bad bacteria in your mouth, in your colon, doesn't matter where it is. And I don't know if most people know this, but chlorophyll, the chemical composition of chlorophyll, is virtually identical to your hemoglobin. Your hemoglobin has an iron atom in the middle, and chlorophyll has a magnesium atom in the middle. Otherwise, they're virtually identical. So when you take chlorophyll in high concentrations, you are building your blood. And up until about 100 years ago, this is how they helped people heal from surgeries. They would give them liquid chlorophyll, but of course that fell out of practice. But there isn't enough chlorophyll in any of our food anymore because the soils are so damaged that they don't have nutrients, and they also don't have chlorophyll. So when you take either one of the algae, but particularly chlorella, you are building your blood. And also, chlorophyll's very alkaline. We get back to that alkaline story. I'll give you a little segue on the alkalinity and why it's so important. So remember I said your cells need to be 7.1 to keep cancer out of them. Well, your blood needs to be even more alkaline. It's 7.34. It's like your temperature. It has to be set there. And if it gets too acidic, and you get it acidic from stress, you get it from foods, whether it's too much meat or too much dairy, in your body, you would die if your blood pH went too acidic. So your body's very smart. It will pull minerals out of your bones, of your organs, and your cells instantly. These are magnesium, potassium, to neutralize the acidity in your blood. And so because if you take algae every day, that doesn't happen because you're keeping the pH the correct level. So you preserve your bones, you preserve your immune system, because when you pull out all those minerals from your cells and your organs, you're depressing your immune system. The other interesting thing is, this is what amazes me about nature and why I just absolutely love studying this thing. So your hemoglobin has a negative charge around it. And the way I describe it to people is, if you ever held two magnets up to one another and they repel one another, right? It's because there's a charge that's keeping them from clumping. Your blood's the same way. It has a negative charge around the hemoglobin. But if your blood becomes too acidic, it strips off that negative charge. Boom. So now the hemoglobin have clumped. Two things happen. They're distorted in shape, so now they can't carry oxygen very well. So this is one of the things that contributes to fatigue. Even after exercise, you're fatigued. Part of it's because your blood isn't carrying oxygen any longer. They also are so fat that they can't fit into the capillaries. So you're not getting as much oxygen delivery, which also delivers fatigue and also causes problems, whether it's for your heart or whatever. So when the algae, because it's so alkaline, it restores the charge back to the hemoglobin so they can be circular around. If you ever do any live blood blood analysis, you'll see the different types of blood diseases that come from different kinds of acidity in the blood. And you see that sometimes they get long and stretched out, and sometimes they clump. But if we can restore the alkalinity to the blood, and the algae does that, that's why this is better than a blood thinner, and it's natural, and it helps clear out your arteries from white blood cells. So it's very, very healing, and also has K2, which removes excess calcium that can be in soft tissue like your arteries. So it's very healing. All this chlorophyll, but it's found in both spirulina, but mostly in chlorella, has very, very healing properties. So again, that's why it's the wellness algae. Now, chlorella's also got the highest amount of tryptophan, which is a precursor to melatonin and serotonin. But the melatonin part is important because that's that will help you get to sleep. So we usually tell people you can take chlorella during the day if you want, but definitely take it before bed, because that's when your body goes through a detox and repair cycle, and the tryptophan will help you get to sleep. And also, chlorella has this amazing ability to stimulate peristalsis, a fancy word for bowel movement, because it's not just what you take in nourishment-wise. You have to clear out what I call the junk in your trunk, because if you don't have regular bowel movements, and most people, quite honestly, are constipated these days, if you're on medications or you're eating dairy or processed foods, or you're stressed, you're probably constipated. And so chlorella will stimulate that process and get rid of that junk in your trunk. Because if you don't have regular bowel movements, I tell people it's like having a garbage truck parked in front of your house permanently, and that's not pretty. So chlorella, because of all these things of pulling out the metals, pulling out the pesticides, killing the bacteria because of the chlorophyll, stimulating the gut biome, it has 40 vitamins and minerals that are needed by the immune system, and 80% of your immune system is in your gut. It gets rid of the stuff that you don't want through peristalsis. Very, very much a wellness, healing, detoxing algae. Completely different from spirulina, which is the nourishing brain mitochondria health. So you can see how they function on two different levels, and they work together, because by pulling out the toxins that might be lodged in the cell membrane, if you're giving all your body this great nutrition, if it can't get in, it's like someone's stealing your parking spot. If the toxins are sitting on a receptor cell, the nutrition probably can't get in. So we need to pull out the toxins so that the nutrition that you're getting from the spirulina and also the chlorella can get in and start doing what it needs to do.
Yeah, this is great. There's so many things there, so many claims, I'd love to look at some of the research. Some of the research around some of the things that are made to sound like this is exactly how it works are more theoretical. So I'm just curious on how you square that whenever you're communicating about some of these things.
I don't say anything. There's nothing theoretical about anything I say. I don't say anything unless I have a PubMed reference. Nothing.
Well, one PubMed reference doesn't indicate that it is scientifically proven. It just
3,000, and there's 100,000 out there. I have personally collected 3,000, and it's a very big chore to put these all into a library based on different categories. And so, a lot of it is a bit of a mess, because I just was collecting stuff. There was stuff whether it's on COVID. There was a study that was released back in June, that a study of with I think 9,000, I can't remember if it's 9,000, but thousands of patients in Israel. Half of them were given the traditional COVID medication, and the other half were given traditional COVID medication and spirulina. The group that got the spirulina, nobody died, and they were all discharged within a week. The group that didn't get the spirulina, very high death level, and they stayed on intubators for weeks. So it doesn't matter what you're talking about. There's massive amounts of science. 100,000 is a big number. It's a very big number. The problem is scientists like to talk to other scientists. This science has not made its way out into the public. And so I do make sort of analogies, like I say, chlorella is like giving your body a shower from the inside, because the consumer doesn't want all the science like I did, like maybe you do, and like other scientists do. They need to understand it at their level. What can they understand? Well, we talk about how algae has nutrients that improve your skin and your health, because it's beauty from the inside, because your blood feeds your skin and nourishes your skin way more. It does more for your skin than any topical that you put on the outside. So, and we've done our own clinical trials. I did two small ones with small numbers, because we didn't have big budgets. They were not a pharmaceutical company. One was on brain health. So we partnered with a nonprofit group called the Great Team. They're in Florida, and they're purpose is to stop the suicide rate of military veterans, which is getting close to 50%. I mean, it's heartbreaking.
It's
and
crazy,
so they've
yeah.
been trying any kind of intervention that they can. So they met me multiple times at all these, because we do all these biohacking shows. So they said, let's do a small trial together. We had, I think it was only 6 veterans who had been discharged for almost either 10 or 15 years because of post-traumatic stress disorder. So what we did was we did a brain scan before they started the test. Then we gave them a pouch of spirulina tablets. There's 30 tablets. We told them not to change anything else, not to change their diet, not to change their lifestyle, not to change anything. But we just gave them 30 tablets every day. We also had what's called a WAVI machine, so it was measuring their brain sleep scores and a variety of other things. After 30 days, we did another brain scan. And so when your brain has, and this happens in college sports, contact sport, when an athlete has had a concussion and they do a brain scan, the color is usually just flat out blue because there's so much inflammation. And so they can't let the athlete back to play until they do another brain scan and see all the bright colors, the red and the yellow and all that sort of stuff. So when we did the first brain scan with these veterans, they all had blue, lots of inflammation in their brain. And after 30 days, and probably it would have happened even sooner if we'd done a brain scan afterwards, whether it was the frontal cortex or the peripheral cortex, all the colors were back, all the red and the yellow, showing that the inflammation was gone. Now, it was a small study. It was a very small group, but and one gentleman had multiple sclerosis. His tremors went away. Everyone slept better. One had one person, we had half women, half men. Their HRV improved 50%, which is remarkable in a short period of time like that. So that showed me that just in a very small subset, we did have a great impact on brain health. And then we did another little study.
Real quick, the brain scans the colors don't necessarily indicate inflammation or not. It's activity.
Well, the activity isn't there if there's inflammation. So they do. I'm sorry, they do indicate. They do indicate. You can go online and read about it. It's if there's no activity, it doesn't show up. The colors don't show up. So if there's
right, but there's no activity in multiple parts of your brain at multiple times of the day.
Well, you measure.
And if you did fMRI versus MRI, there's differences in that as well. Like,
yeah.
So that's just something I'm curious about. Because, I mean, this is what I study. I had 4 concussions in college. I've done this. I've been in the scans. I've done the scans myself. I had neurologists talk to me about it. I've researched it for years and years and years. I know as much about this as you know about Spirulina and chlorella, I bet. So that's what I'm like curious about. Like, and I cited so often our brain scans to equal X, Y, or Z, when that's not what a brain scan necessarily is doing.
Well, I'm not a brain scan expert. I just went through the science that I saw, and it showed examples of athletes with brain concussions, and every single picture I saw showed blue, and then that showed the brain when it was functioning properly with multiple colors. And when we did our own study, we found exactly the same thing. We did the brain scan on these individuals, and their brains were blue. There was no color showing activity, and there was inflammation. And then we did the brain scan afterwards, and the colors were all there. They weren't there before. So, and the only thing
how did you know there was inflammation, though, is what I'm curious about. Like, did you do a blood test for like cortisol, IL-6, IL-7, any inflammatory cytokine, like anything?
No, this was a very small.
The scan wouldn't necessarily indicate inflammation, is all I'm saying.
Well, what I'm telling you is that they showed damage before they started taking the spirulina and had difficulty, post-traumatic stress disorder that they'd had for 15 years. And after 30 days of taking spirulina, they felt better. And the brain scan showed that there was activity. So I don't know what else to tell you. This was the great team's people. I wasn't on location. They were doing the tests. It was their people. They were monitoring everything. We just oversaw I wrote what the procedure was, what the protocol was, and had that session with them before and after, and everyone felt better. And the brain scan that we did showed that there was improvement. I have no other. I can't tell you anything differently. It's all we've got.
It's okay. And I'm not trying to put you on. I'm just brain scans or something. I just see cited incorrectly often. So it's just a sticking point for me at times. But I understand, bottom line, they got better. Still smaller sample size. A lot of the 100,000 studies you articulate are also in theoretical and or in small sample sizes or with animals.
No, they're not. No, you're making
the vast
assumptions.
Majority are.
Well,
I'm looking at research databases and looking at the method section and seeing who's inside of them, whether it's on animals or whether it's on like humans.
lots of them are on humans. And hey, I love skeptics. Honestly, I was a skeptic too. Remember, for 4 years, I was by myself trying to figure out, like, if this stuff is so great, if this stuff does all this that it says it does, why don't people know about it? And I've come to the realization, and you've probably heard this too, that when anything new is discovered in science, it takes 18 years before the science makes its way out to practitioners. And then it's another 18 years before the practitioner knowledge spans out to the consumer. So we're in this huge, we've got this massive amount of science that's been available, but has not made the leap even to the practitioners, even though the science is there, because nobody knows that these nutrients that have been found to do all these great things are in algae. And so that's where I'm the bridge to help people understand that all these studies that you've been doing, 25,000 on superoxide dismutase, some of them are going to be on animals, some of them are humans. I don't have the actual numbers, but they have to be doing various stages. But nobody seems to know that this nutrient is found in spirulina, in the highest concentration in the universe. And so that's why I said my high level approach is it's from a different lens. It's not through brain research, or it's not through gut research, or it's not through any heart research, although I work with all of those people, and they tell me anecdotally, this stuff is really helping my patients. So if I had the time, I would just spend all of my time on the science and getting more testimonials and doing more of these small trials to gather the information for the skeptics. But I don't have that time right now. And, let's face it, I am almost 70, and, it's a lot of work to do what I'm doing, and I'm juggling a lot, and I don't foresee me having a big bandwidth to do a lot more on top of what I'm already doing. So I just do with what I have and try to bridge the gap that I see, which is the science is there, but it's not being communicated to either practitioners or consumers. And so the universe was correct, because I'm a really good communicator. I have been writing since I was 10. I wrote poetry. I entered writing competitions. I am a really good wordsmith. I love writing and I love learning. And so I had to learn all the science, and now I am able to get back to what I do well, which is take the science and put it into a format that can touch people, can reach them. Because if we can't, mothers have been trying to get their kids to eat vegetables since since Earth started, and it hasn't changed anything. So in North America, people want fast solutions. They want easy solutions. So I'm doing everything I can. I call this fast food because it is. You open your mouth, take a swallow of 10 tablets, boom, you got the nutrition that you need. That's fast, and it's nutrition with no binders, no fake stuff, nothing. So I didn't know it was going to be so hard to help people help themselves. It's incredible. And if I wasn't so determined, I would have given up a long time ago, because this is not easy stuff. And
I feel you.
I'm going to keep trying.
Get it, not in your space, but I face similar criticism. I'm in the trauma therapy space, and I use internal famous systems and something I do. There's not a ton of research yet behind it. There's more and more and more coming out daily with actual clients using actual methodologies and things like that. So I feel you in a different space. I feel you, because I feel as passionate about IFS as you feel about algae and things like that as well. So I get it. I'm curious because you say so many things so rapidly. Even the alkaline diet and the alkaline is for cancer stuff is there's just as much research to suggest that there are cancers that can grow in alkaline environments. That really is a thing. They have seen that there, and there's not conclusive evidence yet that an alkaline diet in and of itself or an alkaline environment can prevent cancer. I disagree with you 100% on that. I'm sorry, I'm going to go head to head with you on that. That is absolutely wrong, and I think you're doing a disservice to the community by saying that. First of all, the cancer can exist in the cell. I'm talking about research.
Yes, but cancer
can exist. Not my opinion.
Yeah. Well, you challenged me on my science. I'm challenging you on yours, because everyone has a particular angle. And remember, cancer can exist in an alkaline environment. If the cancer's already there, the alkaline diet will not change it. It doesn't grow into more cells if the other cells are alkaline. If it's already in the cells, the alkalinity will not change the cancer. But this is where we're going to talk about cancer. I'm going to tell you why you need the spirulina. It has nothing to do with alkalinity. So when we talk, I haven't had a chance to go into the electron transport chain, but I know you know what it is. But for people who don't know what it is, these are the molecules that are embedded in the inner membrane of the mitochondria that generate that stuff called ATP. And the way I explain it to people is that everyone's seen a relay race, and in a relay race you have a runner who passes a baton to the next runner, who passes the baton to the next runner. Hopefully they cross the finish line and they win. So instead of a runner in this electron transport chain, you have molecules. And instead of a baton, they're passing electrons. So the idea is the faster they can move those electrons across these four molecules, the more ATP you're going to get generated, okay? And the closer that these molecules are to one another, the more efficient the transfer is. And so again, more ATP. And we'll talk about that later on because I want to talk about phycocyanin. So in these four molecules, the relay race, passing the electrons, there's actually two helper molecules. And think of them as little Teslas that are moving stuff around. One is called CoQ10, which I'm sure you've heard of before, and it's at the early stage of the electron transport chain. But the other molecule is called cytochrome C. And this cytochrome C molecule, as I said, is a helper molecule. And in a healthy cell, the blue phycocyanin, it's phycocyanin. I'm spelling that so you can go online and Google it for you. The blue phycocyanin in a healthy cell speeds up those electrons across these molecules. This is one of the reasons why spirulina gives you energy and chlorella does not, because chlorella does not have phycocyanin. So that's what happens in a healthy cell. That cytochrome C molecule, boom, it's like a Tesla, moves the electrons along. However, in a senescent cell, which is basically known as a zombie cell that's subdivided so many times it's still inflammatory, it doesn't work, or a cancer cell, what happens is the phycocyanin detects that it's in a cancer cell and ejects the cytochrome C molecule, which triggers something called capases, which triggers something called apoptosis. Apoptosis is called healthy cell death. Cancer cells cannot go through apoptosis. They are not able to kill themselves. This is why they grow so quickly. In a healthy cell, when it knows that it's sick, then it knows it's got too many free radicals, it knows it's got a bunch of stuff, it goes, oops, I'm not feeling so well. I think I got to get out of here. And so what it does is it forms these things called blebs. It basically subdivides itself and gives away all of its good stuff to other and creates new mitochondria without any inflammation. I'd say it's sort of like someone who's been in a job. They've been there for 50 years. Now they're retired. They're giving away all their good projects to the new generations that take over. That's what a healthy cell does. I got to get out of here. I'm going to give away my good stuff, but I'm not going to cause a fuss. Cancer cells can't do that because they can't go through apoptosis. So phycocyanin detects that it's a cancer cell, ejects this thing called cytochrome C, and triggers this process. The chemotherapy companies use phycocyanin in their treatments now, and they determine whether, one of the ways they determine if the cancer treatment's working is they measure cytochrome C in your blood system. And if you have high cytochrome C, they know that the cancer cells are dying. Here's this one study. It was done in a petri dish. They dyed the cancer cells purple. It started over here. And then they put phycocyanin in the petri dish and took a picture after 24 hours. So after 24 hours, the purple cancer cells were virtually all gone. And the amount of phycocyanin they used in this treatment, I figured out, was the equivalent to one spirulina algae tablet. Pretty cool, right? And I have the whole paper. This is just one chart out of a 30-page scientific paper, and it's only one of many. If you Google, but who knows what nobody's ever heard of phycocyanin. I certainly didn't hear about phycocyanin, and they don't even know how to spell it. So you wouldn't even know that this exists. But this is, again, a healing property. And the other part that I need to tell you is that phycocyanin, just like this other superoxide dismutase that I want to talk about, is deactivated by high heat. So when you get the lesser expensive algae, which has been exposed to high heat because they need to get to market quickly, it's like getting that great car with no engine in it. The value of the phycocyanin plummets when it's been exposed to high heat. So any of the lesser expensive algae, maybe you're saving some money, but you're not getting the true healing properties. And so these are the things that get me excited, because this has been provided to us by Mother Nature. I can't take credit for algae. That's Mother Nature. I do take credit for growing it so carefully that we preserve all the nutrients so they have the ability to do these things. And we haven't even talked about superoxide dismutase, but now you start to understand that this is, I call this intelligent food. You have to be intelligent to take it, and it knows what to do in your bodies. And that's pretty cool.
The question I have is, when do you determine that you state these things as definitives? Because most the study that you're citing and the things that you're describing are in vivo, meaning they're in cell cultures and in animals.
Well, this one it was in particular, but there's other ones, and
the majority of them are. There's most of it is preclinical, and so when something I'm sure
you're just saying something because you can. You have not read the science that I have. It's not all in vivo.
I have research databases available, consensus.ai. It makes this stuff so easy to research quickly, and a lot of it is preclinical. And so that's not the point. My question more is when something gets into the body, it's far more complicated than in a petri dish. So I'm more curious about the marketing question. How do you determine when you take research and to the general public and say, hey, spirulina does this, as opposed to there's preclinical data that suggests it might help with this in animals? What's your perspective on that?
Well,
I'm just curious about that.
I don't have them right in front of me because I don't have the number of how many were preclinical and how many were on animals and how many were on humans, but it's not all just petri dishes. So I'm sorry, you're wrong about that. Number two, we did our own little small, again, clinical trial last summer because I'm science-based. I want to know for sure what's going on. So we took a small group of people. Again, we're very small, so we can't afford big, fancy, $1 million clinical trials. So it was a group of 8 people, half women, half men, both all over the age of 50, because this is where most chronic disease starts kicking in, and I can explain why. It's because of this lack of the superoxide dismutase. Anyways, what we did was we worked with a company called MeScreen, and they have developed a mitochondrial health test, blood test. So Hemal Patel oversaw the research for us. He does all of the brain research for Dr. Joe Dispenza. So it was a great group, and they worked out of the University of Southern California in San Diego. And so this test, we gave everybody the test, the MeScreen test, blood test, to get a baseline. Then we gave them spirulina pouches. We actually gave them 2 a day. So the 60 tablets, it was a lot, actually. We did another MeScreen test after 7 days, and then we did another one after 30 days. After 7 days, the results came back, and they have different biomarkers, and I don't have them in front of me right now, that would show levels of ATP production, inflammation, whatever. And the results were amazing.
From your perspective as someone who runs a health and wellness company, when do you take what is research, maybe preclinical, and start to promote it as this does this thing and make a claim to the general consumer? And you were kind of talking about that.
Yeah. Well, we have to be very careful about claims. So first of all, we never say something does something. We say it helps with whatever. And I also am very careful to say that algae doesn't do things. It's these specific nutrients found in algae that have been proven to do blah, 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 because of these kinds of studies, whether there's the 25,000 on superoxide dismutase, because I don't want people to say, well, show me the algae study with superoxide dismutase. And there aren't any, because the problem is the scientists don't know that superoxide dismutase exists in algae. So I can only reference the studies about the particular nutrients. And when I've read enough, what's enough, I try to, at some point when I start seeing a trend, it could be after the 5th paper I've read, it could be after the 10th paper I've read, but at some point the light bulb goes on that there's a discovery that I have made about a nutrient that does something important, and that nutrient is found in algae. And then I dig deeper, and like with superoxide dismutase, I don't think anyone knows that it's not only an antioxidant, but it's an enzyme. And so that was a very big piece for me to understand why our algae, spirulina, was working better than somebody else's, because the other companies use high heat, which deactivates the enzyme, which deactivates the ability for superoxide dismutase to protect the mitochondria. And so that's why I decided to do as much as I could on our own science, but it's hard to squeeze in the science because I have to write the protocols, and then we have to get the partners, and then we have to recruit the participants, and then we have to ensure the continuity, and we have to have people following them up every day to be sure they're taking whatever they said they were going to do. Then we have to get the science, the results, and then we have to analyze the results, and then we have to write the paper. It's a process, and I'm running a company at the same time. So
I get it.
I don't take on these things lightly, and we do as much as we can with where we can. So I learned about this company, MeScreen, that had developed a blood test, a unique blood test for testing mitochondria health with different biomarkers. It's still a very early area for them because they're only able to test the mitochondria in muscles. And of course, mitochondria in heart are different from mitochondria in your brain and whatever. So this was a muscle test. So as I mentioned, we did the MeScreen test for their baseline mitochondria health. We fed them the spirulina tablets daily. Then we gave them the MeScreen test again. Like, these are people all over the country, half women, half men. So they had to mail in the results, and then it took a week or two to get, and yada, yada. Then we did the third test. So we were eager to get some results. So the first results we got were analyzing the first week of using spirulina. And Dr. Hemal Patel, who oversaw the study for us, said the only time he'd seen such improvements in mitochondria health was when he did another study with 75 participants, and they did intermittent fasting for 90 days. And after 90 days, the mitochondria health had, some of the markers were very similar to what he saw after 7 days of taking the spirulina. So it was so real people, real bodies, real science, real markers. And so that gave me the confidence to understand that, well, this is really happening. And it's more than just the autophagy. Autophagy is the cleaning up of cells. And so when they're cleaned up, they're getting rid of the excess free radicals and stuff that could be interfering with proper ATP production and making sure that the membrane is intact and all that sort of stuff. So it's sort of like cleaning up your room at home. So when it's cleaned up, things work better. And so that's when you're doing intermittent fasting, you're not eating during a certain window of time. So the mitochondria aren't being bombarded with glucose and electrons, and this might be a great way to explain what's going on in the electron transport chain. But so not eating gives your mitochondria a chance to clean up so they can be more efficient. So that also helped. That also happened when they used our spirulina. But what was even better with the spirulina that you don't get from the autophagy or intermittent fasting is that it actually had healing properties. The spirulina, as I mentioned, has that phycocyanin that speeds up the cytochrome C molecule so that you get more efficient energy, reduces the amount of free radicals that are being released during the production of ATP. So there's less inflammation because there's fewer free radicals. So our benefits and our results were better than just the autophagy that came from just intermittent fasting. But you could do 90 days of intermittent fasting or 7 days of taking spirulina and get very similar results, although actually better ones. So
was this done with your guys' specific stuff, like your guys' products?
Yes.
Heck yeah,
our
that's
specific
awesome.
brand, absolutely our specific brand.
That's
I had
amazing.
to know. So,
yeah.
And so this might be a great segue to explain what's going on in the mitochondria and why this kind of study is so powerful to prove that this stuff works. Because everybody knows you've got this ATP production, and here's a little graphic of the molecules that are embedded in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. And here's the cytochrome C molecule, and here's the CoQ10, and here's the helper cell of the cytochrome C. So the way it works, as I mentioned, it's like a relay race. These molecules, when you are digesting food and you go through the Krebs cycle, and then you get these electrons, they get passed along the molecules to produce ATP at the end. So just like in a relay race, if the runners get close to one another, they can pass the baton. It's an easy pass. But when the mitochondria are getting damaged because of too many free radicals, they expand. And so when they expand and they ultimately explode, it's called necrosis. When they're close to one another, Okay, here's a healthy mitochondria. All those molecules, these molecules are close to one another. So they can make the pass of the electrons. Two things happen. You get efficient ATP because they're close to one another, and you'd have very few electrons escaping because the pass has been made effectively. When you eat food that has a lot of carbs, it has massive amount of free radicals. The mitochondria, the ATP production can't keep up with all the electrons. And so the mitochondria gets damaged and expands. And as it expands, those molecules get further and further apart from one another. So two things happen. They can't make the pass because they're too far apart from one another. So your ATP production is dropped. Number two, those electrons don't just disappear. They leak out into the mitochondria and become free radicals. Now, the mitochondria expand even more because there's even more free radicals until eventually it explodes and all the free radicals spread to the neighboring mitochondria. But what happens with the algae, because it has this high concentration of superoxide dismutase, it can stop the damage, the mitochondria DNA from being damaged, because the mitochondria have their own DNA. And the DNA is located, here's a picture of the mitochondria, here's your cell. And remember, there's 2 million of these mitochondria per cell in your brain. Next highest is women's eggs, there's 800,000, and after that, there's about 8,000 heart. So inside the cell is where the mitochondria are. Inside the mitochondria is where ATP is being produced, a byproduct of which is free radicals. But your mitochondrial DNA are located also right inside here. And there's only 37 of them compared to 22,000 of your regular DNA. But those DNA control everything. And so when they get damaged, this is when your health crashes. Now, this stuff called SOD, superoxide dismutase, is an antioxidant. We all know what antioxidants are. They have extra electrons that they can donate to a molecule that has an unpaired electron, which is known as a free radical. Now, what's interesting in the mitochondria, so a free radical is a molecule that has an unpaired electron, and nature likes balance. And so that molecule will seek out another electron, steal it from another neighboring molecule to balance itself out, which now causes it to be unbalanced. And this is how tissue damage occurs. Antioxidants have extra electrons, so they can donate an electron to a free radical, to balance it out so there's no tissue damage. Now, in the mitochondria, the type of free radical that is released is called superoxide. It's a very specific type of free radical, only in the mitochondria. And it's apparently the most damaging free radical of all. And I was curious about why. It turns out superoxide has 3 unpaired electrons, so it's 3 times as damaging. Now, the good news is our bodies have created, Mother Nature's created for us, a way to protect ourselves from those free radicals. It's called superoxide dismutase. And we have it since the moment we're born, just like we have hormones, just like we have melatonin, just like we have a lot of stuff since we're born. But the problem is, by the time you're 30, the production of these things, like a lot of things, starts to drop. So and it starts as early as 30, your muscles, your skin, whatever. You start dropping in your production of superoxide dismutase. And so what does superoxide dismutase do? It turns these free radicals into harmless water and oxygen. That's what superoxide dismutase does. It's sort of like a big golf umbrella, as I explained to sort of consumers. So it doesn't stop the free radicals, because free radicals are a byproduct of ATP. It's just the way it is. But it converts them into harmless water so the mitochondria DNA don't get damaged. But if you have a big golf umbrella, like you do when you have all this SOD from the moment you're born, you're protected. By 30, it starts to diminish in quantity until you're about 40. And then by 40, the golf umbrella concept is like the size of a cocktail umbrella. So the free radicals never stopped. The ability to neutralize them is no longer there. And age 40 and then 50 is when all this chronic disease starts really kicking in. And I am a firm believer that it's because after the age of 30 and 40, we just don't have the protection, or the mitochondria just don't have the protection that they had before. This is exactly when disease kicks in at 30 and 40. And this is exactly when superoxide dismutase is no longer being made by your body. So now your mitochondria are exposed to all these free radicals. They get damaged, they send wrong signals, and everything basically crashes. And because women suffer even more, because around 40 is also when we go into perimenopause and menopause and lose estrogen. And it turns out that estrogen also acts as an antioxidant in the mitochondria. So this is why women are suffering twice as much, particularly from brain fog and fatigue. But the brain, and this is why women have more depression they as they get older, because everything. I don't know if you read Dr. Chris Palmer's book, Brain Energy. It's a great book. He's a psychiatrist and a professor at the Harvard Medical School. Everything in his books, he says all mental health issues ultimately come down to damaged mitochondria. So when you get the SOD back into your body, which you get with the spirulina, and it gets there quickly because it's a bacteria, has nothing for your body to break down to get access to the nutrients, including the SOD, the first thing that comes back is your brain. It's like turning the lights back on. And it doesn't take long. We've had people with Alzheimer's tell us they couldn't even figure out how to turn their microwave on, and within 24 hours, they were fine again. So anecdotally, we have evidence of this stuff working. We have mothers with kids on the spectrum or have ADHD, and this stuff helps them. It's incredible. It allows the brain to function properly. All of your neurotransmitters and your myelin sheaths have mitochondria in them. And if you don't have proper, and your brain has its own immune system, and if you don't have this protection from the superoxide dismutase, the mitochondria just aren't functioning properly. They can't get rid of the tau proteins on the outside of the cells. And so you just get, everything just starts to fall apart.
Yeah, I love that. I think that we've definitely put you through the ringer on interrogation in the lab results section. So you did amazing. You did great. I would love to shift into, actually, there is one question that we pulled from Reddit that I would love, because you mentioned that you went off stage and didn't have an answer yet, but then researched it. And it's the calorie thing. Could you, in a really short way, before we move into the next section, maybe in like a minute or so, explain how it helps you with energy, even though it's low calorie, and like square that a little bit? Because that was something that we found on Reddit was a common question as well about ENERGYbits.
Well, ultimately, real energy is cellular energy, and your body can't store ATP. It's made in the moment. So you'll notice the energy if you take it before a workout, because you're deploying the energy to run or to lift weights. So you'll lift more or lift longer or run faster, and you won't even notice it. I call it quiet energy. It's not a stimulant. So it's the efficiency by which you are getting energy at the cellular level. If you're just sitting on your sofa, you won't feel much. You might be a little bit more alert. And if you don't take enough, you won't feel a lot. So it's the effectiveness of the electron transport chain is improved. There's the iron that carries oxygen that gives you energy. But it's primarily at the cellular level that you get the energy from. And so there is no upper limit. We fuel NHL teams, and they put 75 spirulina in their smoothie before a game, because they need lots of energy for those fast spurts on the ice and the focus. Chloe will know Wayne Gretzky. You probably know Gretzky. His famous quote was, "You always skate towards where the puck is going." And so you got to have that juice in your fire, or fire in your.
I actually played basketball in college with Wayne Gretzky's nephew,
No.
Dylan Gretzky.
Oh my
I swear
gosh.
to God.
Yeah. And he's from Edmonton. Well, of course, I think he lives in LA now, but anyways. So it's the efficiency of the energy at the cellular level that's going on. And there's no waste, because there's no carbs. So that electron transport chain, because there's no carbs, there's no excess. There's a great video of Lucille Ball, I'm dating myself now, but they have a picture, it's a little video. She's in a chocolate factory, and they speed up the conveyor belt. She's supposed to put chocolates in boxes, and she can't keep up with the conveyor belt. So she starts eating the chocolates and throwing them over her shoulders. Well, that's what's going on at the electron transport chain level when you eat carbs. They simply can't keep up with the demand. And so this is what causes the spill out of the electrons into the mitochondria, which turn into more free radicals. Now, because spirulina or chlorella have zero carbs, you get also that efficiency, because there's not a lot of spill out. And when your body is trying to sort of balance itself out, it can't direct itself towards giving you energy. So, and also because it's absorbed so quickly, literally, it's not technically bypassing digestion, but it gets absorbed so quickly there is no digestion of the spirulina, because if you take it sublingually, if you chew it, will get right into your bloodstream. And your digestion takes up 15% of your energy. So that's 15% that you get back that you didn't have to use for digestion. In calories and sugar are inflammatory. And so your body's constantly on this roller coaster trying to balance itself out because it's also a carb. So it's efficient nutrition. And at the mitochondria level, it knows how to produce energy at the highest rate possible.
Got it. Cool. I'd love to move into what we call the next frontier, which I'm sure you've got lots of ideas about the future, specifically with your company. Like you're grinding on this. What's on your product roadmap? Like, do you have for maybe the next year or maybe even the next 10 years or however far out you kind of go? What's your vision?
Well, there's a couple of things. There's like about 10 different related products that we could produce, and there's companies that are contacting me every day because the biggest problem has not been learning about the science of algae or even growing it, although most Americans still don't know how to grow it properly. It's all pretty much in Asia. The biggest problem is trying to communicate the benefits to consumers. And that's what we have done really well, and certainly tried to do well, and do it with as much science as possible, with no excessive claims, and do it authentically and with integrity. So I don't want to launch any more products until my brand is better established in the marketplace. So because it will be a lot easier then to roll out the rest of these other products. I'm still trying to get people to understand what algae is and why they need it. So I'm just going to stay focused on that for the next year or two, because these other companies, we're in discussions, but we're not signing anything. And some of them are really cool. I'm not going to tell you what they are yet, but they are really cool. Okay. My biggest issue, though, is supply chain, because we grow it in Taiwan. And as we all know right now, there's a tariff war going on that's just nerve-wracking. I mean, I studied international business. I know what this can do, and I have sleepless nights. We grow it in Taiwan. Fortunately, Taiwan's not on the hit list right now, but I have to get farms built here in America. And Florida is where it's going to be, because it's exactly the same climate as Taiwan, which is where the best algae comes from. Making algae is not like growing broccoli. It's like making wine. So it's affected by the sun. It's also affected by the production processes. And so we have the companies that work with us, they've got the best production process. We don't use high heat, so we preserve all the nutrients. So I'm actually planning to go to Taiwan in the fall. And so this company that grows, they're going to build us a whole new plant just for us to get us through the next year or two. And then we're going to start forming a partnership using their techniques, which I love, because honestly, there's thousands of styles and strains, and the taste is different. I must have sampled 200 types of spirulina, and honestly, I'm very particular. We do third-party lab tests to be sure our nutrients are the highest quality. So I love what we've got, and I just want to lift it and duplicate it here in America. It needs to be an agricultural crop here. Get rid of, we're not going to get rid of crappy soy or corn or wheat. It just is what it is. But we need to add something that's actually nutritionally dense. And I have this vision of having like the Disneyland of algae. Like we'll have all the farms. We're going to do the traditional outdoor, but there's also a new technique that we're going to also deploy, which is truly the way to feed the world, which is you grow algae underground in glass tubes using LED lights. And just as an example, there's a company in Iceland that's been doing this for, I think, 5 years. It's 5 levels underground, and they grow it primarily for the protein and the omega-3. They use the omega-3, which they sell, and then they give the protein to Africa. Pretty cool, right? But it's all done in glass tubes with these LED photo synthesizer, photo something, whatever, and very controlled environment. And when you do it that way, you could build these farms anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter what the temperature is, whether it's hot or cold. And so I want to experiment with that and grow it that way, as well as the traditional way outdoors. And that way we can have a comparison to be sure that the quality is equal. And then we can teach other people around the world to grow it for themselves. So that's a big picture. And then I want to have, I'm
Damn, I
envisioning,
like that.
busloads of kids coming in, and we give them an algae lunch, and we give them packaging that's made of algae. Like, there's a huge algae industry out there.
Bro.
There's clothing being made of algae. It's surfboards. There's surfboards made of skis made of algae. Algae is incredible what it does. But again, I know all this stuff because I read all these algae things. So algae just is so unknown here. So I want to sort of push it out there. That was what the universe tapped me on the shoulder for. Get algae out. The world needs algae. You're just the voice. It's not about me. It's about algae. I'm just the voice of algae.
Yeah,
We
that's
need
cool.
to get that. One day I hope to have what I call the Algae Academy, where just like you get certified in paleo nutrition or keto nutrition, you'll get certified in understanding algae, all the different nutrients, how to use it, different protocols. That would be a whole nother sort of things. That's where my interests are, right? Because I'm the educator. I discovered something amazing that the world needs, But to do that, I had to do it my way, which means I had to have the financial independence. I wasn't going to be pushed around by a bunch of investors, and I didn't want to be a nonprofit because we had to make enough money so I can attract good people and keep them and do all these great things. So I need to build the company to be a huge success financially. So then we have the financial resources, to do these things with the farms and to support the rest of our community doing other great things in the world, because somebody has to. Pharmaceuticals have just taken over. But the tide is turning. People are waking up to the fact that prevention is more important, because yes, medical system is there for when you have an accident, you require surgery and quick results. But maybe we don't need to have the surgery if we help our bodies acclimate better and give them the nourishment it needs and take away the things that it doesn't. Spirulina gives you the nourishment you need, your body needs, and chlorella takes the stuff away that it doesn't. So the two of them work really beautifully together. But it's been a very delicate process, educating, growing, staying independent, having the vision, making sure my supply chain is going. We've edited and updated the packaging probably 20 times. There's a great expression, the Asians say, you never step in the same river twice. Every single second is a different environment, you or the river. And so we have a changing political landscape. Some of it's good, some of it's not. And so my job is to keep the company growing and staying true to our vision and our authenticity and our quality until suddenly people wake up to what algae can do for them. And by then, hopefully, we'll be turning it into a big agricultural industry here in America, and I'll let somebody else take on the role of running a company. It's not, I'm doing exactly what I want to do, which is get this stuff out to people, give them the confidence, a good solid product, the science to make them feel comfortable, and the results that they need so that they and their families can have a healthier life from real food, not frankenfood.
No kidding. Well, we appreciate you taking some time to chat with us today. It sounds like you're very busy with your mission. The last section of the pod and the show is something we call the lightning lab. So this is where we'll ask just a quick question, and the goal is to answer it in one word, one sentence, or one story. So it's kind of like meant to be shorter.
Okay.
So that's kind of the last section we'll dive into here before we peace out of here. You want to take it away, Chloe?
Sure. Question number 1 is, what's the biggest myth that needs to die? So what's maybe to you the number 1 health and wellness myth that you'd like to bust?
Boy, that
seed
oils are safe.
That's a good one.
They're so
There we go. Okay, cool. Okay, the next question is, I think you're gonna love this one, but this one is from a previous guest. So each guest, you'll get to leave a question for our next guest. The question that was left for you by our previous podcast guest, his name is David Sorkin. He's 22, going on 300-year-old yogi. I mean, he's quite the kid, quite the founder. But he asked, do you really believe you can change the world?
I can. Do I believe I can change the world? I can make a contribution, and if the world wants to change, they have the information available. They have to make the change. I can only give them what they need if they want to make the change.
It's I like that viewpoint. That's a very interesting. I haven't heard that before. That's beautiful. That's cool. I like that. What's a question that you'd want to leave for the next guest? Like, what's your question that you're going to leave for our next person?
What message would be the most powerful one to give consumers to help them be healthier? What's the one message that we can deliver to help them be healthier?
And what is that message to you?
My message, to me, it's the most simple, natural things, which are not exciting, not the shiny object, are the healthiest and best for us.
Yeah.
It's getting back to basics. I don't care whether it's sleep, walking, air, and I include algae. They're not sexy, but they work.
Right. Yeah. That's beautiful. I wish I could get that message to more people too. Cool. Well, we will ask the next guest that question.
Okay.
So please tune in. And thank you so much for joining the Decision Lab. Is there any place you want to point people? You mentioned there's a code that you're going to give people, listeners as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that. So tell them about that. Tell them where to head.
Yeah, our website is ENERGYbits.com, ENERGYbits. And we write a blog every month so you can come and just learn if you don't want to buy anything. We have a 20% discount code. It's Decision Lab, all one word, and it works on all of our products. The best value are the large bags of 1,000 tablets. And if you use the code Decision Lab, it brings the bag price down from $130 to $105. And if you take 10 a day, that works out to $1 a day. So $1 a day to nourish your body with real foundational food with no toxins and all these great things that your body needs. And we have these fun canisters that come with a bag. But you would only buy a canister once, and then because you can then shake the tablets out through the opening. And then once you use up all the tablets, then you just buy a bag to replenish. And then we also have boxes of individual servings. There's 30. So these are great for travel, lunch bags, gym bags, and all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't matter. The code Decision Lab works on everything. And it's just, if you took 10 tablets a day, a bag with, remember, 551 pounds of vegetables, it would last you 3 months. If you are trying to correct or prevent a medical condition or want therapeutic amounts or better results, 30 would be what we recommend. Now, remember, there's so much nutrition. This replaces supplements. It'll replace a fish oil, a multivitamin. So you get rid of a lot of clutter on your countertop. It saves you money. The expiry is 3 years. Actually, it never was bad. So it saves you time and money because you'll get nourished instantly. Most people swallow the spirulina because it's very chewy because of all that protein. But you can chew them. I chew them. They're the size of a baby aspirin, so they're not very big. You can put them in trail mix or a smoothie or whatever. So, and if you don't want to try the big bags or the canisters, we do sell them in America on Amazon. And a pouch, you can just try a couple of pouches for $6 and then come back and use your code Decision Lab for your 20% discount. And we're very active on Instagram at ENERGYbits is the handle there. So come and visit us there too.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for hopping on. We are going to put all of this information in the description, and you've also sent tons of research over and tons of things that we can put in the description as well for people to take a look at and things. So really appreciate that. Not everybody does that, so thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll send you the link to this the lecture I usually give with all the more science references because I want people to have a full understanding if they want to. Not everybody does, but your community might. So we'll get that to you as well.
Hell yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Take care.
So, all right. Welcome to the lab results section. We're coming down. We're coming down. This is where we get to break down what we really think and talk about the lab results test. So what are your just base level? I took a lot of the questions on that. So I apologize.
I was like, you are in your flow. I'm just going to let my God and listen. And so this was a very Cody Ran podcast, but
yeah, my bad.
It was a journey. Like there was so many things that I learned from that about algae that I did not know. It kind of changed the way I thought about it. She is very, very, knowledgeable, has scanned a lot of the research. And then there's some things where there's a lot of pieces in which we had to kind of question the research and question the validity of it.
Yeah.
And so it was a wild ride for a podcast, for sure.
That was the biggest thing for me. I get a lot of that flack myself. I could not understand where she's talking about as far as credentialism. I could not understand that better. Like I 100% get where she's coming from. So it's just interesting. There's a reason the traditional PhD process, it looks like the traditional PhD process. And so something that takes you less than or a little bit over a year versus 5 to 7 years on average. And there's a really big difference in gathering research and doing research. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of gathered research, which I 100% love. I totally respect. And I love that. And I have a corollary to my own self in the therapy space with IFS. So I 100% get that. But I haven't run IFS research. I haven't like tested a hypothesis yet. Like I collect data on my clients and things like that, but I haven't run that. I haven't defended a dissertation. So there's parts of that I think are really important and adding to that scientific literature as opposed to just looking through it and examining it. There's a difference. And so that was something that I was kind of skeptical of and interested in, but she was very transparent and very open about it. She didn't hide anything. She didn't try to like, so I respect that. I love that. And I'm so happy that it's helping her spread her message. I just worry about what the consumer might assume when they say PhD versus what it actually is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. But I think she did really well at answering the questions and being very open and transparent and honest. And you could feel that from her.
Oh yeah, 100%. I could feel the authenticity, like, and I
very
her story of like bankruptcy and all that kind of stuff, fucking crazy. That's
it was really powerful. I think my biggest regret of the podcast was not double clicking on that more, because like her story of resilience. How many years did she say she was doing this for? 8 years. She'd gone bankrupt. Like, that's so impressive.
Wild.
And to like believe in the product, what you're doing, to that degree, and to not give up is like so amazing. And then she's 69, looks incredible for 60.
Dude,
like I was like, I thought she was like 45.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild. That's I hope I'm
algae every day, so maybe that could be a variable. So
anecdotally, hey, I'm here for it. I hope I'm like that when I'm 70. That's beautiful. I'm here for it. So awesome as a person, love her to death. What about the lab test? Like, what are your thoughts? Like, does ENERGYbits do they pass the lab test to you?
So this is like my thought on it. I think that like we've known that algae is like a strong superfood. Like, it has a ton of nutrients in it, antioxidant potential. I think where we need to always be careful when it comes to supplements is like it's still a supplement. And I think like maybe it could help prevent or help some aspects of cancer healing, definitely. But I don't think we should look at this and be like, oh, this is going to prevent cancer. This is going to cure me. This is going to be like the one thing that fixes everything.
Yes.
It's a holistic approach. So I think if you take anything like from this is like, take it with a grain of salt. It's got lots of nutrients in it. That's going to be good for you, but just don't have the expectation that it's going to cure diseases. That's my take on it.
I 100% agree. They sent me some. It tastes good, and like it's not like I'm not opposed to that at all. It's the claims of things that are very much like under review in science and not definitively like proven, and things are barely ever even proven like conclusively in science. Like I would agree. I mean, I think there's enough research. If you look, is algae beneficial? Like yes, like that has passed the consensus. The consensus. As a research tool that we use, Consensus AI, love them to death. Shout out to them. Please sponsor the podcast. But it passes the consensus meter. Like there's overwhelming support for algae overall being a benefit globally. I would agree though. Like I don't think things that are claimed to be a cure-all. And I understand when you're charioting and being the only person talking about your thing, you have to say things in a way that gets people's attention. So, and that's why we do this podcast. So I would say that there's more research that needs to be done on some of the claims. I do think that the product is worth checking out. Her mission is worth checking out, and getting behind that mission, and her part of changing the world. So I would personally, would I actually buy this? I would probably actually buy this. I would look if I could find, if I'm just being blunt, if there were, and I could do research on the purity that she's describing, and I wish we had more time to talk about that with her, and like, what is their farming process? What is the purity research? Like, what is the stuff that, like she's talking about how the proteins of theirs don't break down or something. She mentioned something about heat being, that was a really specific thing. Like,
no, this, I mean, from like a biochemical standpoint, it makes sense. So if you aren't heat process, if you have enzymes in the product, if there are enzymes in there or proteins denature in heat. So if you're not heat treating your product, then it's going to preserve a lot of the proteins, the enzymes, etc. So it makes sense. But that is something that we need to do more research on.
I only mention that because if there was a cheaper version of Spirulina or chlorella that I could find that still did that and had high quality, I might go that direction. Because I think the algae, those two cyanobacteria are important in this specific product. I'm not exactly positive. But if I am also willing to pay for quality, so if I couldn't find that, and it's absolutely true that there's not another one that isn't doing the same exact thing but at a little bit lower price. So her story and her vision as a founder would probably sell me on ENERGYbits itself, though. So
so I think we conclude that based on the science, the interview, like I agree. I would totally buy this and try it.
Yeah, cool. All right. Was there any surprise moments or any like big lessons learned that you took away?
There's actually a lot. There was a lot of like science.
Yeah, she knows so much. Like I was impressed.
Yeah, she really knew a lot.
There was just she was such a spout of information that I was like, okay, wait a minute. We need more research on that. Like that is like a theory, but that doesn't mean it's definitive. Like so that was a bit to keep up with.
The part about the hemoglobin was something that I was like, oh, I have kind of heard this before, but it was like so far in the past that I couldn't really remember. And so that's something that I'm like, oh, I want to look more into it. So it was like something about like the charge of the hemoglobin and how it changes in acidic versus alkaline environments. And that can change like oxygen and blood delivery, and then how algae impacts that. I thought that was a really interesting perspective, which is something that I'm like, oh, this is what I'm going to like look into after.
And I was looking that up live, and there is actually like that's something that people like talk about a lot, and a lot more research needs to be done on how what was it? It was research on various prevent picture. Let me find this real quick. Interesting question. However, algae directly restore charge to hemoglobin is not scientifically accurate in the way the term is typically used during chemistry, hemoglobin, and oxygen binding. So she was talking about algae, but she was more specifically talking about
superoxide dismutase, that one?
phycocyanin is what she kept talking about a lot, which there's a lot of research around that as well. So that was interesting, but there's a reason that there's an iron and not a magnesium in the middle of hemoglobin as well. So I don't know, some of that stuff again I think needs more research, and if you oversimplify something too much, that can be kind of dangerous. So the other thing I loved is she had all these pictures. That was great. Like that was awesome. That was cool. You definitely could tell she's been on some shows before, because she's like, oh, look at this, and here's this, and here's that. Like, so that was cool. I wish more people did that on the show.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like really, really helpful.
Yeah. So the other big thing was the claims made about the MRI, CT. Well, she didn't even say, was it a PET scan? Was it an MRI? Was it a CT scan? Like what was this? And like bottom line, they can provide an indication maybe of inflammation, but it's not the same as doing a blood test for blood markers. That's just not how those scans are necessarily supposed to be looked at. And so that was something that I was very skeptical of, and I like kind of paused on that a little bit, because I was just like, wait a minute, hold on here a second. Like
you're like, back it up.
Dr. Ben talks about this a lot on Instagram too. I love Dr. Ben. He's from Stanford. He talks about how people make claims about brain scans, but they don't who knows what that means. It's a static picture. If it's not functional MRI, it's static. If it's functional, okay, you can start to see some of the changes, but she was still talking about a static picture. So it's just like, wait a minute, like what? So that was some of the stuff. Awesome that it helped that group of people, that small group of people. But yeah, bottom line, I think more research needs to be done, which is beautiful. It sounds like she is going to be the tip of the sword for this, and getting it out into the public eye, getting more funding for research, which I freaking love. And I love her passion. I love her anti-fragility, to be honest. She's an anti-fragile human, dude. Yeah. Holy shit.
Damn.
She truly is.
Inspiring. It was really, really inspiring.
For sure. So cool. All right. Well, any other takeaway, anything else?
I think honestly, just the thing I took away the most was, you know, her anti-fragility too, and the way in which she handled the grilling and the questions. That was really inspiring. And so if you have an idea that you believe in, it's just like go for it and don't let anybody tell you no.
Yeah, hell yeah. Couldn't agree more. So hate to have to be like the bad guy, but we got to get the consumers this information. And I am as passionate about that mission as she is about algae. So I will ask the questions I have to. So, but all right, cool. That's a wrap for the Decision Lab then. We hope lab results gave you guys some clarity on today's brand, whether it makes sense for you or not. And if you like this no BS approach to wellness, you should make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And say hi in the comments. We'd love to, on YouTube, go drop a comment. Say hi to Chloe and I. We'd love to talk with you. We love when people say hi. It means a lot to us. And if there's a brand you want us to investigate next or an expert you want us to chat with, drop it in the comments or hit us up on Instagram.